Members, I welcome you all for this CPE Study Circle meet on the topic comments on exposure drafts of 7 standards SQM1, SQM2 and highlights on SA 220 revised, SA 250 revised, SA 315 revised, SA 540 revised and SRS 4400 revised. And to dwell upon this subject, we have the moderator CA Vinay KS and 2 panelists par excellence, CA Balaji sir, CA Sunil Bhumralkar sir with us. Can I request our Vice Chairman CA Bhumralkar to escort the panelist and moderator onto the dais and then welcome them with one bouquet. Thank you, Pramod. I request CA Bhumralkar to give welcome. Good evening, esteemed members, panelists Sunil Bhumralkar, V. Balaji, and Vinay KS. I stand before you today not just as the Vice Chairman of the Bangalore branch of ICI, but also a fellow professional deeply invested in the evolution and the enhancement of our auditing standards. Our esteemed immediate past president, Devashish Mitra, aptly remarked, audit is a serious business today, and if you cannot deliver the quality, please go into other businesses. This powerful statement encapsulates the gravity and commitment we hold towards our profession. Today, we convened to discuss the exposure drafts on the standards on auditing. The very reason Bangalore branch designed this program is due to the necessity of our collective engagement. We cannot afford to present an unprepared front to NAFRA once the standard is in force. Equally, if we professionals do not respond adequately and timely to these exposure drafts, we are being in a risk caught on back foot, undermining our credibility and trust placed on us. Our engagement today represents a proactive commitment to upholding the highest levels of transparency, integrity, and diligence. Standards are born from collective wisdom. This gathering is a testament to our commitment to shaping the robust and dynamic standards. Echoing Mr. Mitra's sentiments, we bear a significant responsibility in the financial ecosystem. It is just not about compliance, but establishing trust, integrity, and reliability. In conclusion, our participation today underscores our mission's importance. With our combined efforts, I am confident we will not only serve our community effectively, but also set a benchmark for a global practice. Thank you all. I look forward for our constructive engagement today. Thank you. Thank you, Pramod. Now, I have privilege in introducing today's moderator and panelists. Firstly, I would like to introduce the moderator, C. Vinay KS. Vinay KS is a partner in assurance vertical in ASA and Associates LLP, Bengaluru. With over 16 years of experience in auditing and accounting consultancy services, Vinay specializes in corporate audit services, risk assessment, statutory and internal audit systems, system reviews and JSOCs. He has dealt with various multinational companies carrying out statutory and internal audits and system reviews with a special focus on internal control studies in the sectors of manufacturing, service and the IT software. He also gained expertise in the audits for multiple large-scale clients in the automotive, healthcare and hospitality and industry sectors.
Vinay completed his BCom from Bangalore University, post which he did his Chartered Accountancy from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He also holds certification in Ind AS from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He is a frequent speaker at trade chambers and other forums. His hobbies are music, and he is also an avid cricket follower. With this brief introduction, I present before you CA Vinay KS. CA V Balaji. Balaji is the founder and managing partner of True and Fair Professional Network, a one of the kind firm in the world whose primary objective is to provide audit quality as a service. Balaji brings over 30 years of experience in financial accounting and auditing, working across various industries including agriculture, automobile, healthcare, information technology, technology enabled services, manufacturing, real estate, retail and infrastructure. Over the course of his professional career, he has held leadership positions in Deloitte Haskins and Sells, Chartered Accountants, in roles spanning audit inspections, audit risk, audit quality and regulatory. Balaji has been a co-opted member of the Audit and Assurance Standards Board, the Expert Advisory Committee and the Ind AS Transition Facilitation Group of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He has also been a member of various study groups constituted by the ICAI to evaluate and address issues considered for amendments by the ICAI. Balaji has co-authored various publications of the ICAI, including Guidance Note on Audit of Internal Financial Controls or Financial Reporting and the Guidance Note on Reporting on Fraud under Section 143.3.1 and 143.12 respectively of the Companies Act 2013. Technical guidance on reporting under Rule 11E and 11F of the Companies Audit and Auditors Rules, among others. With this brief introduction, I present before you CA V Balaji. CA Sunil Bhumralkar. Sunil Bhumralkar, based in Bangalore, is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India with 37 years of experience of working with leading accounting and auditing firms in India, including 29 plus years with SR Bartleby. Sunil was the senior audit partner with firm and the head of its assurance practice in South India. He was also a member of the assurance and firm's leadership. Sunil has extensive experience in assurance services, financial reporting under Indian GAAP, Ind AS and IFRS, and internal financial controls. During his career, Sunil participated and led audits of large listed and unlisted MNCs and Indian companies in information technology, manufacturing, pharmaceutical and biotech, healthcare, infrastructure, airlines and real estate sectors. Sunil was a co-opted member of the Auditing and Assurance Standards Board of the ICAI during 2014-15 and was a member of Financial Reporting and Review Group, Bengaluru, for a number of years. Subsequent to his retirement from the firm in July 2019, Sunil is now an advisor to a number of strategic growth companies. With this brief introduction, I present before you CA Sunil Bhumralkar. I hand over the stage to Hello.
Good evening to all the members present here. And thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule and attending this CPE session. As most of you are aware, these standards that we are going to discuss today are in the exposure draft stage, and hopefully this will get through as well. But these standards internationally have already been released. For example, in case of, we have two sets of standards. One is the standards for quality management. So until currently what we have are all quality control standards. So it's called SQC. So the ones which are proposed are going to be called as quality management standards. So there's a set of standards, SQM1, 2 and 220, SA 220, which would fall under this bracket. And the rest of the standards, which have already been revised. If you look at the ISA, International Standards in Auditing, they've already been revised since more than a couple of years. And even the SQM1 and 2 got recently implemented since December 2022. So what we're talking is exactly these standards are replica of these ISAs. And what is the reason, what is the background, what are the key changes? And obviously 2 hours would not be sufficient to discuss all these key changes. We will try and touch upon those high level points, those critical issues which could impact practitioners, which could impact auditors, and how as auditors we need to be prepared, well prepared, and what measures need to be taken and so on, is what we will try and address in this next 2 hours. With that, we start the first, we'll go in this order. We will start with SQM1. So SQM1, as you all are aware, is actually is replacing SQC basically. But again, there are certain changes. So with this introduction, I would like to start with this one question. There are a lot of changes. I mean, there are carve-outs, for example, from SQC. There was a part which referred to engagement, performance, and so on, which has been carved out and a separate channel is created. This question goes to you, sir. Now, SQM1 that we're talking of is at the firm level. So, according to you, what are the new aspects that are being covered, and what do you think is the background behind this new standard being carved out?
So, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. So, good evening, and first of all, I think before I answer this question, thanks to Bangalore branch for giving me the opportunity to be a panelist for this session. So if you look at, I think, all these 7 standards, what you will observe is that while the objectives in most of the cases remain the same, but if you go into the details, you will find that the whole approach has undergone a sea change. Okay, and SQM1 is no different, which is actually a mother standard for all the quality control objectives which the audit firm has to set within its organization. I think what is the major change vis-a-vis SQC1 is the whole concept of being from a reactive standard. Okay, whereas we looked at the policies and procedures to be implemented in a firm for quality control exercise. There is a very subtle but very significant change, which is in terms of quality management. Okay. So what does that mean? So it has not just remained like a kind of a reactive, tick in the box kind of a situation, but you are here, the firm has to manage its quality control. Okay. So what actually it signifies is that the firm has been given the kind of I would say independence to formulate its own quality objectives. Okay, and work out the quality management system within the organization. However, with a very clear condition that it has to meet certain set of objectives which are defined by SQM1 in any case. But if as a firm you want to put any additional objectives, quality objectives as a part of your firm strategy, you can always do that. I think that's the first and foremost change which is there. Second thing is that while I think in SQC1 we talked about the governance, role of the leadership, etc., etc. We talked about client acceptance processes. EQR, like engagement quality review, which was part of SQC1, has been separately carved out. But what is, I think, the critical is that an additional aspect has been introduced, is putting the risk management system in place. Okay, so that is, I think, one fundamental change, I think, which has been done. The other change, I think, which has happened is the is the information and communication. So information and communication within the firm, within the system, internally and externally. So I think those are some of the aspects I think which have been covered in great detail. The third aspect is while there is a talk of scalability, and I think me and Balaji we were discussing about the scalability part of it. I think that you have to take it with a I would say a pinch of salt. That scalability doesn't mean that you can eliminate or you can remove some of the things depending on the complexity or the lack of complexity of the engagements that which you are carrying out. But your entire contour should remain the same, except that as a firm you can decide as to what are the processes which are less complex, what are the processes which are more complex. I think all those aspects have been taken into consideration. And the third aspect I think which is most critical is the recognition of outside expertise for carrying experiments. And the other is of course the resources which are technical resources, intellectual resources, what is my knowledge management system within the organization that is the firm. Or while doing say IT systems audit, if I don't have the capability within the firm, can I outsource it to another professional? Then obviously it has been mentioned that. So it's a very detailed SQM which will kind of, I would say, is a paradigm shift vis-a-vis the firm's quality management system.
I supplement a couple of points. Like Sunil mentioned very clearly, SQC was a very passive, static document. And let me give a simple example. Your office is in Bangalore. You open a branch in Mysore. Does the Mysore branch have a separate SQC? You will typically say the SQC applies to the firm and therefore Mysore branch doesn't need to have a separate SQC. But ISQM1 looks at it differently. By opening a Mysore branch, what are the additional risks the firm is exposed to? That means the new branch is there, what is going to be the oversight, how do you know the same quality control process which are there in the Bangalore office will be replicated in Mysore? There are risks coming up. Therefore, your ISQM document has to pick up these risks, address these risks. And therefore, ISQM is a very, very live, contemporaneous document. It is not a static document. ISQM1, in a way, has to live along with how your business is progressing. It cannot remain static. Very, very clear. And in a way, SQC was sometimes viewed as though how the firm was being governed. SQC was superior to how the operation of the firm were. That is how, it was like a memorandum articles. That's how sometimes some firms viewed it. It will say, firms will simply say, my policy doesn't allow it, I will not do it. ISQM doesn't say that. If your policy doesn't allow it, can you amend your policy to allow a transaction? If you amend your policy, what are your risks? How do you address those risks? So like Sunil was mentioning very clearly, the risk assessment becomes a very, very important process of ISQM1. It is very similar to how you ask your clients the risk control metrics for internal financial. Same way, regulator will ask what is the audit firm's risk control metrics to address the risk. That is the whole concept which is coming up. Thanks.
Absolutely.
I think rightly pointed out. I think one of the key concepts or words that we can take out of this new standard is proactiveness in how firms react, and the other one is definitely risk management. A risk-based approach is what is we should be.
Like for example, I think what will happen is, say for example, if I don't have the, if I don't have the capabilities in the organization for financial services, that can be one of my quality objectives. To say that I will not do those audits unless I build the capability. So it is one. Or maybe if I want to put that as an objective for me to grow the firm, then I must have the resources in place. So it's a very dynamic kind of
Talking about risk assessments, I think that's also one of the key aspects or components of this particular standard. Like as you rightly mentioned, we as auditors help clients with their ICOFAR, let's say setting up their internal control financial statement system. Reporting system. Now, as auditors, audit firms, this is the requirement. So we need to actually look at what our quality objectives are. I mean, if you can maybe dwell upon what exactly this entire risk assessment process is going to be. and what are the components that we need to cover, how this process is going to be, and as audit firms, what is it that they need to do?
Yeah, a couple of things here. The first is SQM1 is sort of aligning with COSO in a way, because the components of control which is there in COSO are all in effect being brought into SQM1. For example, a significant component is information communication, monitoring is already there, risk assessment is there. In SQM1 we call risk response matrix. That means what is going to be a response, which is your control activity. So it is effectively mirroring COSO sort of. The only advantage in SQM1 we have is the components of the control objectives are mentioned, which is leadership governance, ethical requirements, client acceptance and independence practices, resources like Sunil was mentioning. Now it is no longer restricted to human resources. It is looking at intellectual capital, knowledge capital. It is even looking at financial resources. So because quality can improve only if you have financial resources. Therefore, financial resources also is given importance in the SQM1. Therefore, SQM1 is a broader, but it is specific to the elements which are mentioned: engagement, performance, and monitoring. So this is all the components where you need to do a risk assessment and then identify all the risks as to what can go wrong. Risk assessment is very simple. What are the chances that the set quality objective of the audit firm will not be met? That becomes a risk. And then you put a response to the particular risk. Then there's a lot of emphasis on monitoring. The beginning, which is leadership and governance, and the ending, which is monitoring, both these are given a lot of importance. The scope of leadership and governance has been expanded tremendously. So therefore, taking on a leadership role in an audit firm will come with more responsibilities which has to be demonstrated, which will be monitored, and whatever monitoring activities there will get communicated also. Be communicated within the firm, and tomorrow we don't know, NAFRA may come back and say, please disclose your scores to your audit clients also. So we don't know what level of communication will happen, but its potential that can be there. NAFRA has already talked about transparency reports. So it can be an extension to that. So therefore, the framework is very clear. We look at COSO, same thing is applied in SQM1, and the components of control which you have to look at are already identified in SQM1. Therefore, it's a finite thing, but let me be very clear. I am working with a lot of firms in terms of helping them in their SQM1, and every firm is struggling. Because the level of detailing which is required, and because it's a contemporaneous thing, it is not like you develop 1 year and forget about it. Things have to change. Who is going to monitor what changes are required? Therefore, it is a continuous live document. Therefore, the bandwidth investments the firms have to do on this aspect has to be very clearly understood. Otherwise, it will again be a check in the box. It may not meet the regulatory expectations. It will not meet even the firm's expectations of running quality application. Therefore, you need to plan for some of these aspects very, very clearly. And it's not a 1 year exercise. Implementation will take more than 1 year. Even the large firms with all their muscle power are started for 2-3 years before the implementation happens. And the good thing India will have is probably to start getting feedback from other geographies as to what went wrong or what went right in the other geographies. We can incorporate the learning as we adopt SQM1 or SQM1 in Indian context.
I think you stressed upon governance and leadership being one of the key aspects of this standard. Sir, if you may, if you could highlight on what could be the, in terms of governance and leadership, what would firms actually have to, what kind of steps that the firms have to take, and what are the new aspects here? I mean, as compared to, the previous SQC1 did have a little bit of governance in place, but here I think it is, the standard is talking in detail. This aspect is actually dwelled in detail in this particular standard. So what according to you would be the key change here?
No, I think just to take, I think Balaji has very clearly brought out the whole risk management process which you need to put in place. And I think when you talk about risk management, and I think you also mentioned about COSO, the fact that as auditors, we need not get overwhelmed by the fact that there are so many things which have been asked. Which have been expected of us to do in the firm's quality control, which we have been doing it as auditors in any case. So I think one of the key aspects of putting the quality control within the firm is the tone at the top, right? And I think the most important, and then how it is derived from, how this whole tone at the top to say that there will not be any compromise on the quality, okay, even while growing the firm. And then with that particular objective in mind, what are the things that you need to take in place? Okay, is the responsibility of the leadership to put the governance mechanism within the organization, within the firm, okay, which includes the leadership related responsibility, delegation of authority for doing, say, quality risk management to the, because you will have to ultimately implement it, so everything cannot be done by the CEO. But at the same time, making sure that the managing partner or the CEO is responsible for putting the whole system in place, monitoring mechanism, etc. within the organization. All these are encapsulated in the governance and leadership. So what happens is, I think, what are the, I think Balaji talked about the risk management, but what are the critical, risks for achieving quality? And one of them is that maybe a lackadaisical attitude towards quality, okay, or and how you will actually curtail it. That if the top management gives a different perspective, then it automatically percolates down to the organizational level. So if there is a very strong focus on quality at the top, then it will automatically get percolated. So one is at the governance level. Second thing is, at the leadership level, so the standard very clearly makes managing partner or the CEO responsible for that. Second thing is that you need to have adequate organization structure in place. Depending on, again, I think Balaji talked about the flexibility and all that stuff. Depending on the organization, the scale of operations, etc., the complexity, geographical dispersal, and so on and so forth, to put the whole organization structure in place. Third thing is then obviously the reporting responsibility. And what I am talking about is nothing new. I mean, it's all part of the internal control structure which we anyway encounter every time. Then the other aspect is to delegate this entire work of quality and risk management to somebody who is capable enough of handling the QRM. I mean, you will have to, of course, identify a partner, who understand the risk, who understand the quality, has the necessary experience, etc., etc. And most important is putting the right team in place in that, because if it is an inadequate team, then obviously the focus will not be there on that. It has to go beyond the engagement. So what happens is that till now we have been always thinking if I do an engagement review, then that's the end of the quality approach. No, it's not. So it's a very holistic in terms of client acceptance, etc., etc. All these aspects flow from the governance and leadership. I mean, that actually sets the tone from the top, okay? And making sure that I think, it percolates down to this thing, including, performance management, for example. If there are any dereliction of duties in performing quality, what are the consequences? Somebody has to put that in place. So this whole focus from the top to the percolating down to the firm, I think is very critical, and that is performed by the governments and leadership.
Rightly said.
Just to supplement, quality is a very nice word. We all love quality, but it's very challenging to actually adopt it, follow it, implement it. Which means the leadership and governance structure should have the perseverance, patience, and the ability to influence its team to implement quality. Because any compromise, if one partner says take a shortcut, then the whole thing will collapse. And therefore, the question of how the leadership is able to influence the entire team to adopt a sector, passion to quality is very, very important. And that is what is being emphasized in SQM1. I'm sorry if I'm referring to SQM1 because I'm used to that.
Taking cues from what both of you said, I think it's about tone of the top and the cultural. It has to be a cultural change in the firm. So that's what we're looking at. So another key aspect is monitoring and remediation. As you mentioned, this is going to be a continuously evolving kind of a thing. It's not 1 year you do and just sit back and relax. It has to be reviewed year on year. It has to be, it's a continuous exercise. That is one. In terms of monitoring and remediation, what do you think would be the significant change or step that firms like us are going to take, and how is it going to impact?
Yeah. So quality is never a destination, it's always a journey. So to take the journey forward, you need a very, very strong monitoring mechanism which will give you constructive feedback as to where you stand today on quality and what steps can you take to enhance quality. And therefore monitoring is an important aspect. Monitoring was also a component in SQM1. There is no real change. But in SQM1 what is happening is there are more nitty-gritties being explained in terms of how the monitoring aspect of the SQM1 should operate. SQM1 looks at not only just monitoring, it is talking about engagement monitoring, partner level monitoring, it is looking at firm level monitoring on the SQM practices. And not only that, it is asking you to look at the root cause analysis. If something went wrong, can you get out to the reason why it went wrong? And then once you know the root cause, can you develop a plan to mitigate the root cause? So it is getting into great detail in terms of what are the steps you need to carry out in your monitoring activity. It is not just it's not just a question of verification and finding faults. It's a question of acknowledging that something went wrong and therefore what do I need to correct, why it went wrong and therefore what do I need to correct, who is responsible, when it will be completed, what sort of a follow-up mechanism will be there to monitor the implementation of the follow-up or the implemented remediation plan. So it's very, very detailed in terms of the monitoring activity. Monitoring, most of the firms don't give importance at all. I personally give phenomenal importance because we always learn by mistakes. And this is a chance where instead of NAFRA picking up a mistake, we are picking it ourselves. And it's good. We can correct. Even if NAFRA finds the same mistake, I can go back to NAFRA and say, don't worry boss, I have already found this, I am already correcting it. That's an accepted practice. Even in PCOB, it is not that every firm does a great job. There are mistakes which happen and the PCOB gives an opportunity for you to correct it. They will come back next time and check whether you have corrected it. If you have corrected it, you are safe. If you have not corrected it, then there will be penal actions come. So therefore, monitoring is an aspect where you can prejudge a regulatory action and protect yourself, which is very, very excellent practice protection mechanism. I think every firm should very, very seriously invest in monitoring activities, even with the current SQC. Even before SQM1 comes, I think monitoring is something which can be done. Yeah.
Sir, can I?
Yeah, please.
Sir, I have two questions. Sir, in the ILFS case,
Yeah.
the SFIO investigations were initiated, but subsequently the defense was that the auditors had resigned and therefore they cannot be held accountable. But subsequently, I don't remember, there is a recent judgment. The fact that the auditor has resigned does not absolve them of their liabilities with reference to attestation. This judgment I saw very, very recently. So, is it that a new development or just by resigning the auditor can wash off his sins? That is question number one, sir. Again, take that, I will tell the question number two, which is completely different. So you can
No,
take
you can
this question.
ask the question.
Okay. Second question is, sir, there is the recent Coffee Day Enterprises, Coffee Day Global Limited case. There is a familiarity threat that was focused majorly in the NAFRA order. See, definitely, sir, like, we socialize, we move with the client, the management, we participate in social functions. There will be joint membership in other boards also, where the management also is a member, we are also members. So in that context, is familiarity a genuine reason for doubting our independence, sir?
I'll answer the second question first.
Right, sir.
First question, I think, is out of syllabus. It's not relating to the monitoring aspect. Second question, because you are bringing independence matters, which is part of SQM1, I'm talking about it. On the second question, I don't think NFRA has looked at this familiarity threat in isolation. They looked at the whole of the conduct of the audit, and then they have come to a conclusion that probably this is an event because of which all this conduct of the audit is problem. Let us say NFRA didn't find any other observation. I don't think they would have looked at familiarity threat. They were forced to look at familiarity threat because of the conduct of the audit in the other areas where they found a lot of problems, and because they had a lot of problems, this is like a free supplement to the problem.
Catalyst.
Exactly, that's what has happened.
Oh, the first question is out of syllabus, sir.
Out of syllabus. Out of syllabus for two reasons. One is, I'm being conflicted in answering that. That's also a reason. So,
Oh, you represent BSR and company?
no. I don't.
Moving on, there are a lot of firms with international networks. So with this new development, let's say the new standards, obviously these network firms share resources, share audit methodologies and so on. What will be the impact for such firms? I mean, do they still need to do a risk assessment process? Do they, I mean, like any other firm, or they can just say that we are anyway part of this international network and we already have these methodologies and we are already having these resources and so on, and we are good to go. Is that?
Yeah. So, of course, we have to still face the proof of the pudding. Okay, this is an answer which is my perception. We don't know what's happening as an outcome going on. Today, if you look at the definition, resources has been widened. So, if an international firm gives you an audit methodology, that's also acknowledged resource for you. How do you place reliance on that resource? How do you know that audit methodology is consistent with your standards of audit? Either you need to have a mechanism where you validate it and say that somebody within the firm says that everything is fine and therefore it's reliable. Because if somebody gives a tool, you will not just take it. You have to assess the relevance and reliability. And that is very important. Therefore, that becomes a part of those. But bigger to that is, in any SQM1 development or SQM1 development, if you are in a network and you are sharing resources, you need to very clearly understand who is taking responsibility on those resources. If the network says, I am giving you the audit methodology, I will ensure that everything is done. They like, today you have got your SOC 2 sort of report or SSA 3402 report, where they give you a report saying that this is relevant. I can rely on it. But if they say, no, you have to carry it out internally, then you have to do it. But the problem, the issue is, unless you have this clear communication with the network, you won't have an answer. So therefore, engaging with the network, for example, network may say, I will monitor your whole SQM1 compliance. You look at engagement performance because engagement performance you are doing. SQM I am providing to you, therefore I will monitor the whole thing. They may say that. Then you don't need to populate your risk response metrics for monitoring, because then you can understand what the network is doing on behalf of every firm and then rely and use that one. And you will get only the inputs or the outputs of the monitoring activity performed by the network, which is relevant to your firm. So therefore, it's a very engaged conversation with the network, and people need to be very clear in terms of what are the aspects covered within the network and by the network. Otherwise, things will fall in the cracks, and then you may suddenly find that one area is not covered by both. That should not happen. So therefore, there is constant communication and engagement required, and the results needs to be obtained consistently. Network cannot say, I am doing all these ABCD things and not giving any results. That is not correct. You should have been subject to monitoring, you should have been given those policies and guidances. How do you know everything is being given to you? How do you know the completeness of that? Even new methodology is being developed. How do you know the network is communicating to you? So all that aspect has to be addressed. That becomes a risk. When you are using network, that becomes a risk. How is the completeness of information from the network ascertained? That should be a risk, and then you need to put your mitigation procedures to that.
So even in that case, the Indian representative firm is still responsible.
Absolutely.
And they need to ensure that this is factored in their quality objective and quality risk and whatever.
Absolutely.
See, because here the most important aspect is that, see, if you see the way the auditing standards and the accounting standards are being formulated, there is a convergence which is happening in both the places across the world. Okay? Because you want to actually ultimately create a uniformity for, typically what are you doing it for is my overall investor and the stakeholder community, which may not necessarily be restricted to India but global. Now in that particular situation, even if I am a part of a global network of firms, I need to make sure that whatever processes that I am following are at the minimum meeting the requirements of the local requirement, and which are getting, as I said, which are getting aligned every day. I mean, and I think this ISQM and all these aspects are a classic example, because if you see SA 315 and all that, it is, it is just taking some of the cues from the, the international standards. So that's the way I think, it's going to be.
Sir, I have one question here on the independence only. It is not anything else. Sir, there are many CA firms which audit a particular client, the signing partner retires. After some time, the signing partner becomes a director of that firm. For example, one Mr. Venkatramani is the director in Loyal Textiles. Suryan Company was signing, even now it is signing. Deloitte's, when Coastal Gujarat was there, S.R. Batlibhai, S.B. Bilimoria, which was associate of Deloitte, that partner was made a director in CGPL. Maybe the 3 years waiting period cooling period would have been over. I mean, can you please elaborate how it is permitted, whether it crosses the independence or familiarity threats, sir? Just clarification.
See, bro, you have to look at it this way. First is if the retired partner sees all commercial interests of the firm.
Sorry, sir?
If his retired partner has already seized all commercial interests of the firm, that means they are not drawing any pension, nothing to do with the firm. They are technically off the firm. They are anybody like anybody in the road. They are not performing the audit. Therefore, unless there is any other provision in the law which says that somebody has to have a cooling period of 3 years, I don't know where that is coming from. But if such a thing is there, then you need to follow that. But otherwise, the framework of independence doesn't prohibit anything because he is economically independent. He is like anybody in the state.
But his appointment itself
So
would have happened had it
that
been.
goes with each of the firm's policy. I can really look behind the letter of spirit of the law and say I will not do this, do this. That is up to each of the firms. There is nothing by law which prevents it. Go ahead, sir.
In respect of this network of firms, see, we have seen
several instances where something is not possible by a statutory auditor to do in India, it can be done in so many other countries. The same thing, maybe valuation, bookkeeping, these are. Only thing, the requirement is that for disclosure, that's all. For India, it is not like that. We cannot do that. So that type of level playing field is not there with us when network happens. So what type of constraints and securities we should adopt in this type of situation?
So if you see that this particular, I think what you are saying, that as an auditor I can do bookkeeping and all that, by and large, globally that is not possible. Okay. So to my mind, I think India is as much a level playing field as globally. Vis-a-vis these services are concerned, be it valuation, be it accounting services, etc., etc. Whatever is there in the company that typically it prevails with some variation or the other, globally. So I don't think that's a kind of a challenge. Okay.
And section 144 broadly covers the wider network in the Indian context.
Yeah, that's what my question is. In India, we are prohibited to do a lot of things as statutory auditor. Whereas in some countries, that type of restrictions are not there. So they can do a lot of things. Except to the extent of bookkeeping, all advisory services, everything they will do.
That goes with the respective country's law.
But
If you look at PCOB, PCOB standards are very aligned. They are looking at the whole entire network as one firm. Like EY or Deloitte or KPMG, PwC, worldwide is one firm. And therefore the same independent rules apply. You can't say, okay, in Finland something is being done, Singapore firm can do anything else for the subsidiary of the Finland company, they can't do that. Because Finland company, audit firm and Singapore audit firm are viewed as one firm.
in those circumstances, Indian auditors, they have to draw a specific whatever the program, whatever is there, where some of the services done by some foreign countries, foreign firms, may not be acceptable in India. That was
the issue is this. These international firms are very, very comprehensive database of international clients. Suppose I am doing, if I get an engagement in India today of an India subsidiary, I will have to do a search whether the parent is being audited by parent or any other subsidiary is being audited by another member firm in another country. If it is there, I need to write to them saying that I want this. Certain things are automatically prohibited. You can't even write. But if there is the borderline, then I have to write to the other country and say that you are auditing this company. I have got an opportunity with India subsidiary on this engagement. This is the nature of the engagement. You please tell me whether there is a conflict or not. That conflict check has to happen, cleared, and then only you can do the engagement.
And this has to be recorded in
It will be part of the client engagement.
And it will be part of this SQM in any case, because one of the critical criteria is to maintain the independence requirement. So that's my quality management system within the organization, that if I am a part of a larger network, how am I maintaining the independence, okay, from all these prohibited sections. That's all.
So moving on from the network firms to small and retail firms. Instead of, I mean, we always, people have already started demonizing NAFRA, and obviously these standards will look really scary. But on the positive side, what would be the advantages or merits of firms embracing this culture or this set of standards and moving towards compliance of these SQMs?
So, I think, now I know that, I mean, if I read the standard per se, SQM or even predecessor of that, SQC, I mean, it had 80 pages, now we are talking about 118, 120 pages. So, while reading that, I think, you can get a little bit overwhelmed. But if you were to ask my frank opinion, this ultimate objective of this whole entire thing is to build capabilities within the organization. Okay, so this is one part of it. Second thing is that they are also moving away from a kind of a reactive or a tick box approach to a quality management system. And as I mentioned, I think earlier also, that within the framework of SQM1, okay, and code of ethics requirements, etc., you have flexibility in terms of, I think, what you can do, to what extent you can scale down. So, for example, if I don't have a financial services organization, I am only a two-partner firm. How do I handle? I mean, I can't have a delegation of authority, across the firm, because that's not possible. But what is my procedure for the risk assessment, etc.? And if you implement this, I'll tell you, you are actually building the capabilities of your firm, and you can stand, in competition to the overall firms, including maybe some of the bigger firms, etc., because you have implemented the quality system within organization. So you know what your strengths are, you know what your limitations are, and you are actually responding to that by putting the quality in place. And at the same time, not losing sight of the growth of the firm. So if you want to grow the firm, then obviously then you are going to build the resources, etc. So it's a very holistic approach which is being taken. The second part of it is that it is only I would say it is only a mindset. Okay, but if you look at all these aspects, and I again mentioned what I mentioned earlier, is that as an auditor I have done this before for the client. I am going to do it in the organization. So this is the second. The third thing is that while I understand that, I think the standard does not give any leeway in terms of eliminating some of these things. But if you see that every step, and you can read the standard, every step there is a separate paragraph to say that in case of less complex form, what are the things that you can do, or what are the things that you can have some flexibility in the approach. That's the third. The fourth thing is that if you see that we should not get worked up on the fact that I think there are so many things which have been mentioned, that they are talking about the systems and controls and processes and monitoring mechanism and all that. The first thing I think as a firm we should do is that not get overwhelmed by the technical jargon, what is stated there, the magnitude of the standard, etc., etc. But even simple good policies and procedures within the organization and the system, which need not be IT enabled at all. Okay, if I put that in place, that is good enough. What is important is to have a full quality management system in place. In what you manage, monitor, etc., is your comfort level. You don't have to go by over-engineering the process. So, to my mind, I think if you were to ask me, I understand that it can create some kind of overwhelming feeling, but I would say that this is manageable, and it will actually help in ensuring that the firms are able to scale up and stand to the test of competition. I mean, Balaji.
Yeah, I completely subscribe, but I have a slightly different angle, completely different angle on this. SQM1, we should acknowledge that it will pose challenges. It is good definitely, but it will pose challenges. Now, I see a significant opportunity in this challenge. The opportunity is, why should every firm reinvent the wheel on SQM1? Why can't the firms come together, even by forming a network of their own? The firms which are serious in audit can actually leverage based on SQM1 how to form a network. Build your capacity, size and scale. Because as a network, you will invest in SQM1 only once. If 10 firms join together, instead of investing 10 times, you will invest only once, advantage 1. 2, you will have more number of resources to delegate the work on the SQM1. It's not that the one firm with 2-3 partners doing all the work. It will be 30 partners across 10 firms who can distribute the works better. Therefore, SQM1 in a way, directionally, firms start open-mindedly thinking about it, provides a wonderful opportunity for networking, just to minimize the cost. Otherwise, you will invest some money to invest in SQM1, another firm will parallel invest the same money. Why duplicate? The SQM1 is the same.
And I think it is also about allowing outsourcing of.
Exactly. Lot of things can be. We are very, very innovative people. We can find a better way to do things in following a SQM1.
I mean, for this, for example, experts, outside expert, I mean, we have all these standards engaging outside expert and all that. Similar activity can be done for this SQM1 as well. I mean, you don't have to, I mean, you can build your own capabilities over a period of time, but till that happens, what? You can look at those.
I'll do some marketing talk now. Just 2 minutes.
So,
As a firm, we are already being approached by international firms to offer SQM1 as a service to you. SQM1 as a service to you. They are saying that my firm can create the entire policy, risk management metrics, everything, and monitor it also. Other firms internationally will not invest in parallel time in developing it. They will just subscribe to my model and then they will adopt it. So they will be maximizing on cost. If I talk about international network, they are having 100 firms. Instead of investing 100 times, they are investing only 1 time. So I am seeing very clearly a tangible advantage.
Sir, sorry if I can. Sir, while doing the audit of private limited companies, see the board members and shareholders will be more or less the same set of individuals. But if the private limited company has taken funding in the form of non-convertible debentures through some intermediaries from retail investors, a huge amount, say 40-50 crores. Now, after the final tranche of the NCDs are collected, if the management wants to issue a loan to a related party, okay, board, there is no need for an audit committee, so board will approve, the shareholders also will approve. Sometimes later there is a risk that the funds may not be recoverable from the related parties. So in those circumstances, should not be a signing auditor mention in his audit report an emphasis of matter that there is duplication of the same set of individuals both in the board as well as in the general meeting who have approved it. They would have contributed only 1 lakh or 5 lakh as share capital, but the entire money that is available with the company is from creditors. So do the auditor also have a responsibility towards creditors in such circumstances? Because audit committee is not required, related party transaction would have been approved also as per the company law because AGM resolution would have approved it. How do we ensure compliance? Should the auditor go beyond these approvals and say everything is hunky-dory, or he has to qualify the report?
yeah.
So the issue is this. Emphasis of matter is a very, very completely misunderstood terminology. When you are saying emphasis of matter, what do you mean?
You are not in a position to get satisfied.
You are in agreement.
You are not in agreement, yes.
No, you are in agreement. Emphasis of matter. This is what I am saying. Emphasis of matter is completely misunderstood. Emphasis of matter means you are in agreement with what the management has done.
It's not a qualification.
It's not a qualification. It's not a substitution. That's a completely wrong statement.
So how, suppose he doesn't agree, then
He
how
doesn't
do we-
agree, he will have to express his view. He will have to express his view, saying that the company has borrowed money and has lent the money to a related party. So if you look at NAFRA's chairman current thing, he is very clearly saying, are you focusing on the business rationale of the transaction? Now you need to understand what is the business rationale of borrowing money and giving the same money to a related party. You need to evaluate, as an auditor, it is your responsibility to evaluate business rationale. Good old days we used to say, boss, I don't get the proprietor of the transaction. That is not acceptable. SA 240 requires you to look at business rationale. You will look at business rationale. If you are not satisfied, you qualify the report.
So auditor's judgment.
It's an auditor's judgment, but after performing the procedures.
But emphasis of matter is not a substitute for qualification.
Which I start off by saying, emphasis of matter is something which is grossly misunderstood by the auditors. It is a very, very serious statement which is being made. The auditor, by putting an emphasis of matter, is actually sticking his neck out, saying that he is agreeing to the client. That's the biggest sticking neck out. In fact, the client should be happy that an auditor is putting EY.
So suppose he wants to qualify it, then he should not put the emphasis on
He
that.
should not do.
So he has to issue a
Qualified.
Okay. Moving forward, I mean, it's almost 7 and we have just covered one standard. So, and we have just done the surface scratching only.
I'm sorry,
We haven't
just
got
a
into
quick
detail.
2 points regarding the SQM that you mentioned about. So one is talk about the risk management system and the stress on doing that. So I mean, I didn't have access to SQM, so I just had SQC1. There was no mention about business continuity and the risk involved along with that. So is there any specific emphasis?
Nothing on business continuity even in this. Because they believe that you will put up your RR in such a way that business continuity is ensured.
Okay, but isn't that a significant risk? Because as we talked about now, big firms will have it, smaller firms.
It's your objective. Like what Sunil was mentioning, you define your objective.
Okay.
If you are worried about business continuity, then you put that as a risk.
Okay.
And then you address it. Nothing stops.
Okay, fine. So the second question was regarding the recognition of outside expertise. So I had so it was pretty generic in nature in terms of as you said about IT. If I don't have the expertise, I engage in outside expertise. So the question is that one is the criteria of choosing that expertise to engage in the review, and second is the liability in this case. So I am relying on an external expertise. So does it absolve me, or if the issue is found later on, who is finally liable? So buck stops with me, or I don't know.
At the end of the day, all responsibilities with the auditor, the engagement partner. Okay? How you assess the auditor involved is expert involved is not a SS 620 is covering that. You look at the competence, capability, objectivity, independence, all those things you will evaluate. Commercially, how you share the risk, that's a commercial agreement between you and the expert.
So the responsibility is still with me, even if it's an expertise.
You can't outsource.
I mean, typically you will also use this auditing standard when using one of another.
SS 620.
Yeah.
So very clear that responsibility you cannot
Delegate.
delegate. You have to take, but the expert you can base the judgment on the basis of expert, which will be considered.
Provided you have looked at the independence, objectivity, competency, capability of the expert, and you are comfortable with the model or whatever is the output of the expert achieved. That means you have to critically evaluate. It can't be just, he's just giving you a report and you keep the report in the file and say everything is fine. That is not acceptable.
So we move on to the next standard, that is SQM2. SQC1 did address this a bit, but now we have a separate standard which is carved out, which is on engagement quality reviews. So talking about SQM2, it has dealt in detail with respect to the appointment and the eligibility of the EQRs, that is the engagement quality reviewers. At a broad level, what would be the steps that a firm should actually take when it is considering appointment of EQRs?
So what happens is, so as you rightly mentioned that it was always there, and it is in SQC1. SQM1 also talks about EQR. But I think the significant aspects of this, appointment of EQR, processes which the EQR needs to, put in place to do the review of the engagement, etc., and what are the responsibilities and relationship between other team members and EQR are very clearly mentioned in the standard. So typically what happens is that the authority for SQM2 is actually being derived from SQM1 in the sense that it's one is the quality management. And now when I come to the engagement quality mechanism, what are the quality aspects that we have put in place? Okay. So for that, the appointment of a engagement quality reviewer or putting an engagement quality review mechanism within the firm is one of the key objectives of the standard. And by doing that, so what are the, again if you look at say SQC1, you will find that you have to define what are the quality objectives and what are the processes that I need to put in place within the firm to achieve or to meet those quality objectives. So if you see that appointment of EQR, in what circumstances that EQR needs to be appointed, engagement quality reviewer has to be appointed, has to be determined by the firm within the organization. So what happens is if you see that the standard is not saying, okay, appoint EQR in this particular situation or don't appoint EQR in this particular situation. So typically I think that has to emanate from your organization depending on the industry, the complexities, the level of judgments which is involved in the audit, what are the kind of estimations required, okay, etc. etc. So if you look at, I think some of the practices that, which of course I was familiar with is that typically say for example listed companies, within the firm there was a mandate to appoint the EQR, or like say for the financial service audits, irrespective of whether it is a listed company. Now these are the objectives that you have to put in place, and then you appoint the EQR. Now what is the role of EQR? And is to essentially look at the critical areas, and I think one of the most important aspect will be EQR should play a role throughout the audit, but he is not part of the engagement team, is what is mentioned here. So what it means is that you are like an independent, somebody coming from outside and looking into the engagement. So I think that's the most important part. So typically you will look at some of the significant judgments, estimations, how the audit team has done the planning, how they have identified risk, whether there are any suggestions from your side that you want to give it to the engagement team, etc. etc. Do some of these activities around significant areas of audit observation, significant areas of audit like estimation, subjectivity, wherever there is a subjectivity, element of subjectivity involved. So all those aspects I think the EQR needs to cover, and he has to give his findings to the engagement partner. But again, I think we talked about engagement partner being responsible for outside expert. Engagement partner is responsible even internally as well. Even though EQR happens, ultimate responsibility for doing sign off is EQ's, and he is responsible for even identifying where the EQR is required.
Is it similar to this hot review? I think you were much familiar. Hot review and
not really a hot review, but
hot review is voluntary.
Yeah.
EQR is mandatory. Mandatory either as per the SQM, like you said, listed entities are covered, or as per the firm's policy.
That's it.
Hot review is voluntary. You can choose to get a hot review done.
normally these all the aspects are covered in there.
Yeah, that's it. And so there is a very
But hot review cannot substitute EQR.
Yeah.
that's it. But I think there is a clear link between engagement partner, engagement team and the EQR, because you have to work in tandem with each other to achieve your ultimate objective.
Talking about working in a coordinated manner, the engagement partner and the EQR, according to you, what would be the circumstances, or let's say, where one should draw a line? I mean, obviously, as Sir rightly mentioned, an EQR should definitely raise questions on significant judgments or significant issues in the audit. But ultimately, it's the engagement partner's responsibility. I mean, EQR need not worry about how it was concluded or how it was, in terms of how the engagement partner takes it.
No,
He
he
has
is
to-
definitely worried. unless the EQR gives a concurrence, the engagement partners are not supposed to issue the report. EQR is very powerful. If he says no, you can't give, I am not satisfied, the audit partner cannot give a audit as per the standard.
Absolutely. In fact, I think you have to, I mean, it very clearly mentions that your dating has to happen only after the EQR is signed. I mean, all resolved, matter resolved, not just the work.
In cases like there is a conflict, for example, let's say the engagement partner doesn't agree with what the EQR has commented upon, what would be the...
So firms, SQM should, this is also a risk. Therefore, the firm should have identified this risk and should have a conflict resolution mechanism. That means there will be a third party independent another partner or even an external expert to whom the same matter will get presented and that person will give his views which will help these two people to align to their purpose. That is typically what happens. But this is a risk which is there, definitely. It should be recognized, it should be identified and the risk mitigation process will be there. Typically it goes through a consultation process.
And let's say we are talking about small and mid-tier firms. EQR as a role also can be outsourced.
Absolutely. Even today, SQC1, if you see our SA220 which is addressing some of the EQR things, they are saying that the work can be outsourced so long as that member is a member of the institute. That's it.
So the firm should have a policy on EQR.
Correct.
There must be a written agreed policy.
Correct. It should identify the engagements which are covered by the EQCR. Okay? Because it can't be just listed in like Sunil was mentioning, it could cover industry specific risks. Financial services is a high risk because RBI keeps changing regulations. Your opening financial statement may not be correct, report may not be correct. Therefore, I need the EQR for that. So your firm policy should identify which all engagements are covered by the EQCR. What will the EQCR do? How many documents? Because NAFRA was ahead of time. NAFRA already started reading EQR for documentation. The EQR documentation actually coming out only in SQM2. SA220 didn't happen. But the disadvantage was SA220, since it's part of the performance of audit, and SA230 is also adjoining standard, NAFRA drew reference to SA230 saying that EQR also should document. SA220 didn't say that. SA230 very clearly excludes EQCR. But NAFRA's interpretation has been different. That anyway, the firms will start battling it out. But SQM1 very clearly, SQM2 very clearly specifies the documentation which has to be maintained by the EQR.
Suppose the firm has a policy, this program extends only to the listed companies. Will there be any?
Nothing. I will only say, if I look at it from NAFRA perspective, NAFRA will say, boss, I have got companies which are other listed also in this company. So they will be very harsh on that, and then you will have to face the consequence. But the standards of auditing is restricted to listed entities. But because of not having EQR, if there is any quality drop, see EQR is something which is the firm level. Therefore, NAFRA can come back tomorrow and say, a non-listed entity which is NAFRA covered, if let's say there are a lot of problems, they may turn around and say, had you had a EQR, it would have been addressed. Since you didn't have a EQR, your SQM1 is deficient.
And I think the other thing, Balaji, is that if you were to look at it, because I have been engaged, so actually I can draw a lot of comfort that somebody else is looking at it, actually it's better for me. Especially in the, I think the listed company or so what you mentioned is that whether you don't do it for other than listed, I mean there is no restriction.
In fact, many engagement partners are sometimes worried about EQR because if you ask difficult questions, how do we deal with it? I am happy if you ask difficult questions because let me answer him internally instead of answering a person like NAFRA. It is better to me, I am safe. So it is actually a very, very constructive exercise and should be looked at positively.
Only you can make a threshold about this third turnover or about this.
It's up to the firm's policy.
That ECR is subject to disciplinary action.
So NAFRA is banning them also.
Yeah, okay.
I think that QRB and this NFR reports are all talking
NAFRA report, every report EQR is banned.
Sir, instead of questioning the EQR, like we have not covered this, we have not covered that, either our institute or NAFRA can give a to-do list or a checklist of...
Not possible, no, each audit is different. Industry is different, requirements are different.
No, like yes, no remarks.
NAFRA does not want yes, no remarks. They don't accept it.
The whole trend is to now document.
Document what you have done.
Yeah. Your skepticism and judgment, everything they want you to write. You have to go back to olden days and start writing elaborate notes.
No, because if they were to prescribe that, then it will become a tick box approach rather than.
No, not tick box, sir. Like,
Yeah.
you can have a verbose also in terms of complaints, and specifics can be added as additional points.
This is a responsibility of the audit firm. Audit firm should develop that.
No, audit firm cannot develop the left hand side as well as the right hand side, sir.
Left hand side is developed centrally, right hand side is built up by the respective tier.
No, you cannot, the standards or compliance requirements, we only set as a firm. And the engagement partners simply checks
Today
against.
SQM2 is very clearly telling what you need to do. Nothing more needs to be developed. It's already twisted. You follow that. Now the problem we are having is we don't want to follow. Because we are saying document too much because I don't have time. Then you will only have to suffer. No? SQM2 is already telling what has to be done. They don't need to do anything beyond that. And this is consistent with the international practice.
Moving on to the next standard, we move to SA 315. Identify.
I think with regard to this, there's just the documentation part. That's what is that I think there is a very elaborate discussion on documentation on the standard itself. Because they have actually given a lot of details as to how you should go about it and all. So to that extent, I think all these standards, the draft standards at least, are pretty informative in terms of what you can actually replicate maybe some of those aspects into your own.
I'm sure implementation guide also would be convenient. Next we take up SA 315, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatements. So I think this particular standard has undergone a complete revamp. Lot of new terminologies used, references to IT controls is significant in the standard. So if you can highlight some of the key aspects that the standard is covering.
This is one training session actually.
That's what.
Okay. The big thing in SA 315 is, one thing, good thing is, objective has not changed. As auditors, we are responsible to identify risks and perform the audit in relation to the risk. That objective has not changed. But the path to reach that objective has completely changed. It's completely changed. You have to effectively forget what you have been doing so far and relearn this new thing. If you try to apply any part of the old thing, you will find it very difficult to understand the new requirements. Starting point. In the old standard, we had something called as material class of transactions. That concept itself is new. Material class of transactions don't exist as a concept. It is now significant class of transactions. Second, when I identify a risk, I classify the risk as significant risk or normal risk. Let's say it's a fraud risk, it automatically becomes significant risk. What international standard studies felt was, every risk has multiple assertions. It is not that one risk. Suppose let's say, goods dispatched are not recognized as sales. Now I can say, if sales is not completeness is an assertion. Cut-off is also an assertion because I didn't recognize the revenue timely. So now there are two assertions. Now which of these two assertions are more important? Are the same control there for each of these assertions? We are historically used to seeing one control for covering all the assertions. But each company can be different. They may have very precise controls to address specific assertions. Now, when I say this risk is a significant risk, both the assertions become significant. That means my extra of testing increases. Because if it's significant risk, I have to test more. Now, if I turn around and say only completeness is a significant risk, cutoff is not. Because so long as my revenue is completely recognized, I am fine. Cutoff is automatically ensured. If I say that, then completeness becomes significant risk, then I will attribute only the assertion as significant, not really the risk. That means cutoff will be a normal risk, completeness will become a significant risk. That means I will do more samples for completeness, less samples for cutoff. So it is asking me to precisely identify the assertions, and then it is asking me to gauge this inherent risk in the assertion. Inherent risk is a new concept which has been brought in. Inherent risk means that risk exists whether a control exists or not. You don't perturb with control. Without the control, you need to assess the risk, inherent risk. And based on the grading of the inherent risk, there is a spectrum which you create. It could be high, medium, low, whatever terminology you want to use. But you grade in the spectrum and then you do your testing. The concept of significant risk is changed because it is now linked to the assertion, not to the risk. That is the first. Another important concept which has come out is there is something called as control risk. Control risk means what are the chances that even though the control exists, the error can still happen? It can go undetected. That means the control may not have operated. Somebody, when passing one voucher, he just looked at something and passed the voucher. Anything could have happened. What is the chance that the control can fail? You have to look at the control risk. Control risk is identified after you do the design and implementation testing. If the design is failed, the control doesn't exist. No need for control risk. But if DNA is passed and you want to test operating effectiveness, then you have to do control risk. Control risk will take you the sample for control. I am not sure how many of you are familiar with internal financial controls. I drafted guidance, therefore I am familiar. Now in internal financial controls there is a terminology called as risk associated with controls. Now if I do control risk, do I need to do risk associated with controls? Institute has to clarify that the guidance will have to get revised. But these two are different concepts. Control risk is only looking at the risk relating to financial statements risk. Whereas risk associated with control is much broader concept. It is looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of the control. Therefore, these two are different terminologies. Now, if I identify control risk, do I again need to identify RAWC? I don't have the answer. Institute has to clarify. That's a clarification which is required. Because that will require amendment in the guidance. There is no point in identifying control risk multiple times. So, therefore, there is an amendment which is required, which will happen. Then the issue is going to be that risk assessment very clearly, it was there in SA 315 also, but it's been reiterated that risk assessment is not only at the planning stage. It will continue from planning stage till the time you sign the report. That means you can keep revising your risk, updating your risk, grading your risk, and do performance approaches. Risk assessment is not once in a like audit journey exercise. It is a continuous process. And then you need to keep revising your risk and explain why risks are not required to be revised. Because let us say some evidences you couldn't get. I may need to change my risk and do further procedures to satisfy the account is correct. For example, I say that my plant procedures to get confirmations. Confirmation response doesn't come. I can't stop the audit. No, I have to do alternate procedures, which means my risk will get revised. That means the minute confirmation doesn't come, there is a potential that the customer doesn't exist or the bank account doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, then it's a very serious matter. No, I need to do more work. So I need to respond to that particular change in circumstances. My audit file should demonstrate all the changes in risk and how I address those risks. Therefore, risk assessment very clearly has been brought out to a continuous exercise. Information technology control, as when I was mentioning, that is a new area. SA 315 did not even mention that. Here there is very comprehensive guidance looking at automated tools and technologies of the client, the IT environment, IT processes. So IT environment has been given a lot of importance in the whole scheme of things. I am only worried about multiple CFOs because multiple firms don't have the IT audit skill set within the firm. And if today ISA 315 or SA 315 revise is going to bring out all these things, it will be a very, very easy target for the NAFRA. Okay? So things need to be very carefully done. I am not sure how banks and financial institution audits can be done without doing an IT audit, because they are dependent on IT controls. So therefore there could be dramatic changes. I think firms will have to seriously start investing in IT audit or engage with people who are good at performing IT audit, use them as external specialists, but you take the responsibility. That means you need to have a mechanism to tell them what they have to do, make sure that they have done the work, and then you are comfortable with the outcome they have provided. So there is a lot of work required in that area.
Sir, in the revenue recognition, the example that you gave, like Tata Motors financials I recently was going through. Sales includes trucks which are invoiced but held in our premises on behalf of the customers.
Correct.
The customers have taken control of those vehicles based on our invoices, it says. Suppose the bills are accepted, the liability is transferred to the customer, that is fine. But if it is just a open-ended sale where customer is expected to take delivery, but he may choose not to take delivery also. So they may wait until the time the balance sheet is signed, whether they are taken delivery of or not. So after signing, say maybe after 3 months of signing, suppose a whole lot of vehicles get returned or not accepted by the, will the validity of the FS get into question by NAFRA or our standards?
No, two things. First is the company should have a policy to estimate sales returns. Auditor will validate what is the history of returns to be comfortable with this thing.
Opening.
Yeah, so he will also know what is the practice of this customer. He will see all those things and get a comfort of that. Whatever situation you are saying is 99.9% not going to happen. It can be a fear. But how is the company's controls or historical empirical evidence addressing this particular thing? Like for example, if you take the US market, generally I go to Walmart and buy. Walmart will say 90 days free return. And look at the sales which would have happened in 90 days. Can I say that I will not recognize revenue from 90 days? So India's 115 is very clearly addressing these issues. So you follow those issues.
I think just to address what he was saying, that if the goods are held on the premises, okay, and if a customer has identified them as their specific sale, okay, and they are taking the responsibility as a owner, okay, then that sale will be complete under Ind AS 115, subject to, I don't know what Tata Motors policies are. But that is how it will be. But it has to be specific, not generic. Out of these 100 trucks, I will take 50. No, it's not like that.
Yeah, they are specifically identified.
They will be explicit.
They will have the vehicle identification number, just chassis number or something. That will have been identified.
It was not possible under AS. Ind AS has not. That hold and keep it. That is possible.
AS also it was possible.
Yes, they had institute, I think.
See, AS was much easier, risks and rewards. Tomorrow, let's say something happens to the truck in the warehouse. I don't incur the loss, the customer will incur the loss because he is already taken possession of the truck. So AS was much easier. Ind AS is tougher, but even in Ind AS it will qualify.
No sir, this Baiju's way of recognizing revenue, like you recognize revenue the moment the student enrolls himself. So for the entire year you take revenue, but of course based on some guarantee given by some another bank. So tomorrow if the student drops out, it becomes the contingent.
I don't want to comment because I don't know the facts. Because what you are saying also may not be the facts. See, any academic revenue is over a period of time because you have to enter the courses for 1 year or whatever the period. Therefore, point in time recognition by default is wrong.
Okay.
Because you are anyway offering, saying that I will offer this course for 1 year. No? How can you recognize revenue today? That itself is a fact.
Okay.
These are things, bank guaranteeing and all, I don't know those things.
It's like a school fees.
It's like school fees.
Like, you take it upfront, but you render education service over a period of time.
No, the student gets a loan from the educational lending institution and the money gets paid to the Baiju's educational institutions kind of. So what happens is, if the student drops out,
We have to follow accrual system, it's not going to collecting cash. Accrual system, you recognize revenue only as you enter the service. Are you entering service at a point in time or over a period of time has to be determined.
okay.
Moving quickly to the next.
Sorry sir,
Yeah.
one more if you permit. If it's not okay, I will stop. Sir, I once visited Al Futtaim in Dubai. They are the dealers of international automobiles. So what they used to say is, Honda, Toyota, Suzuki, they will ship their spare parts, vehicles, etc. from Japan. And it will be on the seas. But the moment this ocean freight receipt is cut and entry is made as dispatch in their system, it will be taken as GRM will be made in Al Futtaim system. And once it reaches them and they find there is a shortage here and there, etc., they will issue a debit note which they will accept. It is a vendor-customer based on relationship. So suppose you do a stock take on that. So this taking this as a goods receipt, is that right, or it should be treated only as profit?
Goods in transit. It's a goods in transit. You look at the supporting evidences to say what is goods in transit.
But
This is shipping bill or invoice, etc.
okay. But we have to see on whom the liability or the property in goods still vests.
Yeah, that you will not
That
assess.
Depends on the importer also.
Good.
Moving on to the next standard, we are left with just 30 minutes and we have another 3-4 standards to cover. So we'll address SA 220 now, quality management audit of financial statements. SQM1, 2 and SA 220 are kind of interlinked and they are also different in a way, but there are a lot of interlinkages between the standards as well. Do you want to highlight what those aspects are and how we need to view this particular standard?
See, SQM1 is a quality management at the firm level. SA 220 is a quality management at the engagement level. At an engagement level, who runs the engagement? The engagement partner. Therefore, SA 220 very clearly gives guidances to the engagement partner as to what are all his roles and responsibilities and how he should satisfy it. Right from saying that this engagement has been accepted correctly, I have got the right team to perform this engagement. He has to acknowledge everything. And I believe that this team is capable of performing the audit as per the standards and regulatory requirements and give an audit opinion which is reliable. So he has to confirm right from engagement acceptance to staffing to performance and reporting. The whole guidance is given in SA 220. The only change is, one is, this is making it slightly more granular on the partner. Second is, the earlier SA 220 had EQCR. That has been removed completely from this and put into ISQ. These are the two changes which are there. One is a change because you moved EQCR from SA 220 to SQM2 because EQCR is at the firm level. Second is there are more detailed guidances available to the engagement partner in terms of what are his roles and responsibilities. Because you see large audits, there may be multiple partners. Let me give an example. Let's say you take ITC. ITC has got multiple divisions. Now one partner cannot audit all the divisions because one is huge, two is geographically also there in different places. So he may have different partners doing the audit, but reporting to the main partner. Main partner cannot say, boss, other partners have the work, I am free. I can't do that. He has the overall responsibility. Even if there are multiple partners, he has the overall responsibility to supervise and make sure the other partners deliver a job which he can rely on. So therefore, the oversight supervision guidance has to be given by the engagement partner. It's a single person. Any person signing the financial statements is the engagement partner. Keep that very clearly in your mind. You can't say that somebody does the work, I am only signing, I am not the engagement partner, that will not work. Because in many firms, senior partner will lend his name. They are in huge risk. Because if there is a problem, the signing partner will get hurt. So you can't delegate work. It is very clearly the responsibility of the engagement partner. SA 220 is very clearly telling what should that partner do. That is brought about.
So, talking of engagement partner, I mean, EP's role has been very clearly defined in the standard.
Correct.
You want to mention about specific aspects that is addressed in the standard?
So, I think as Balaji mentioned, I think there are these quality management is at the three levels. One is SQM1 at the overall firm level, quality review at the this thing, and at the again the firm level, percolating down to the engagement, and the third one is the management of the engagement. And if you see SA 220, the entire focus, okay, and very explicitly it has been mentioned in the standard that engagement partner carries the overall responsibility of the engagement. Okay, how the engagement needs to be performed, what are the, what are the kind of quality objectives he wants to set out within the engagement, what are the requirements, whether he has adequate resources, he or she has adequate resources to carry out the engagement. If the resources are not available, whether anything needs to be outsourced. I mean, the standard actually goes down to the granular detail to say that you can actually then escalate within the organization to seek more resources. So it has gone to that level of detail. Third thing is the the level of expertise which needs to be there within the team members, be it the IT expertise or outside expertise which is required for carrying out any of the estimation and judgment related aspects if the help is not available within the organization. In a relationship between EP and the engagement team, the overall documentation, relationship between EP and the EQR, again overall documentation, ultimately taking the full responsibility for the engagement, etc., are all the responsibilities which have been greater detail, it has been mentioned in the standard. In fact, including the need for an EQR. I mean, engagement partner within the framework of SQM1 and 2 needs to figure out whether his engagement or her engagement needs a EQR or not. So I think a major, I would say it's a major shift, but there is a reiteration of engagement partner's role at the engagement level. So what is there for the managing partner and the CEO for the quality management at the firm level, I think the similar responsibility has been entrusted to the EP at the engagement level. I mean, I would say it is that important.
There is one review standard, there is standards on SRS 4400 on agreed upon procedures. I think what has happened to this particular standard is that a lot of things have been defined and a lot of things have been replicated also. For example, the EQR part of it, the independence aspect, everything has been brought into this particular standard, which was not there earlier. And it also talks about how a report or an engagement letter can't be vague. So if you want to bring out those critical aspects, I mean, what the standard is actually addressing.
Yeah, like you told, SRS 4400 is a standalone, self-sustainable standard. It talks right from client acceptance to independence to perform engagement letters to perform. Everything which is required for an agreed upon procedure has been defined in the standard. Okay? If you see the standard, the guidance is more on the explanatory side of things, which is the application guidance. If you see the standard, there is only one paragraph which is English, nothing much. That's how we look at it. But the problem is, I don't say a problem, but the good thing is it is providing more clarity. And when I read the standard, I was amazed at the mistakes which I was making when I was issuing agreed upon procedures report. For example, earlier days I used to give a report saying that I ensured that this sales agrees to the trial balance. They are saying the word ensured is like giving an affirmative opinion. These are all prohibited words. So they have given a list of prohibited words in the agreed upon procedure, and if you see those words and take any AUP report today, you will find those words. Very how commonly we have been miscommunicating is coming out. Then one thing which came out very clearly because of this was, I finally realized that agreed upon procedure is only an expression of facts. No opinion. That means any word which is bordering on opinion you should not give. I traced, I checked, they are all actions, therefore you can use a lot of verbs, but no adjectives. That is what is coming out very clearly. And that's a very important statement, because if you are giving the correct report, which should not be misunderstood. Because many times the AUPs are there when you are issuing a comfort letter, when you are issuing to the lawyers and bankers. Your risk is actually very high. If you write wrongly, those guys are capable of suing you. So, therefore, this is a very, very important standard and it should be carefully read and applied. We cannot take it for granted. When in doubt, read the standard and draft your report. That's the advice I give.
So I think here my feeling is that there is a lot of misconception even in the client's mind as to what this agreed upon procedure should ultimately conclude. And that's why people then use the word we certify, we have verified, we have done this. But this is only, you have asked us to do this and these are the facts. That's it. No opinion is expressed.
Actually, some of the AUP reports, unfortunately, there are that this is not an assurance engagement is never there. It's unfortunate that people don't even carve saying that it is not a
Correct.
quantity. So
That is a requirement.
that's a requirement. No, it should be the model should be very
Very
clearly.
clearly followed, I think, and there can't be any compromise.
And client should be educated that an AUP is never a substitute for a certification or OP.
That's
Correct.
That's important.
You see, one of the things which standards indirectly bring out is, they are saying that is the objective of the reporting met. So if the objective of the client is different and your objective is different, then there is no alignment. That agreement should happen first.
then it should be an agreed upon procedure.
Because their objective is they want an opinion. Whereas our objective is to check facts. So that clarity should be obtained before the agreement acceptance happens.
But sir, I was with Tata Power previously. In the overseas subsidiaries used to get audited. That report, suppose we have to give to the multilateral financial institutions, the auditor will refuse. He will say, I have given the report only to the
for this
client.
purpose, yeah.
That's
So if you are going to give it to the banker, I am not going to answer him, nor I am responsible.
Correct.
And the institutions will expect the auditor to say yes. I mean, they will expect the auditor to issue a copy directly to them, which they will refuse.
Yeah.
But audit report is a public document, no sir?
Yeah, on the framework. It depends on
Sorry?
the framework. Whether it's a general purpose financial statement or a special purpose. Suppose they are given to you for fit for consolidation, it becomes special purpose.
It was a general purpose. It was going to be consolidated with the.
Then it is good for consolidation. That's what I'm saying.
Sir?
If it is given for purpose of consolidation with Tata Power, it becomes special purpose.
Special purpose, yeah. Okay.
Because it has limited use. Because for example, they will use a materiality which is different than the materiality they would have used to start their standalone audit. So therefore the complete change in scope of work itself. Therefore they can't expose us to a bad track.
But their statutory audit for their countries will be a standalone financials.
So between AS and Ind AS with reference to revenue recognition, if the customer has a right to
No,
return,
it's completely different. AS looks at the seller perspective. Ind AS looks at the buyer perspective. Direction itself is different.
okay. So it means the certification has to be seen with reference to the client, whether Ind AS is applicable or AS is applicable.
AS is applicable or Ind AS is applicable depending on what criteria they follow.
Yeah, correct.
But I'm saying the standard, the approach to standard is diametrically opposite. AS 9 and Ind AS 115 diametrically opposite.
Sir, can you elaborate this point, sir? Please, if I can request you.
Which point?
They are totally different, you said, no?
That's what. In the AS 9, you look at the review from the seller perspective. Whether the seller has transferred the risk and reverse. Let me give a simple example.
Yes.
India has got some carve-outs and exemptions. I won't get into that. But keeping aside that, let us say you are buying an apartment. And let's say Shobha is building it. Shobha developers.
Right.
When will Shobha developers recognize revenue?
Completed contract method.
What? Completed contract?
They will recognize revenue by the time I keep on paying my installments.
You keep on paying your installments. So building is being constructed. Will they wait for the apartment to be handed over to you, or will they recognize revenue as the construction happens?
As the construction happens is what I understand.
Correct. But under India's 115, India's 115 says, as a customer, what have you got?
I have got nothing except
Therefore, no revenue.
Yes.
Therefore, you can't recognize revenue.
I cannot recognize as an asset.
As a revenue. Shobha cannot. Shobha earlier was recognizing revenue as the construction happened.
Okay.
Now under India's 115, since you have not got any value out of it because there is no apartment,
Yes, yes.
Shobha cannot recognize revenue.
Okay.
It's a very simple, crude example. India has got some carve-outs and things like keep that aside.
We just take 3 more questions because in the interest of time, we have to cover another 3 standards. SA 250, consideration of laws and regulations in the audit of financial statements. Again, there have been some changes. So if you can highlight what those changes are and how it's going to impact our documentation as an auditor. How do we ensure that we are covering all the laws and regulations, and if there has been a suspected non-compliance of a particular regulation? As an auditor, what is it that we need?
So Vinay, I think the point is that again the objective remains the same. That's one. There is even the old standard talked about laws which affect the operational part of the company's performance, as well as those laws which do not, but they could be fundamental even from the continuum. Say for example, environmental laws. So that was there in the old standard, which has been fairly more elaborately discussed in the current standard. But in the current standard, what you see is that there is a little bit of subtle difference, that non-compliance is with the rules and regulations. So if you have a if you have done anything, which is suspected, like some bribery or something like that, in a personal capacity, but for the purpose of business, then that gets covered in non-compliance, which was missing in the earlier standard definition. So maybe it's just an elaboration on that. The other aspect is that again, I think it covers typically all the reporting requirements which we have under various reporting standards. We all know that between SA 250 and now the revised SA 250, we had all these changes in the Companies Act where auditors have been entrusted the task of reporting on the frauds and not only to the shareholders, but if they exceed a particular limit to the regulators, rather the authorities, etc. So all those aspects have been brought out into this particular standard. The other aspect I think which they have mentioned is that they have actually given an illustrative list of what are these laws that we are talking about. So they are actually talking about some of the laws which are data protection, for example, environmental aspects. Because there is a recognition in the standard to say that as an auditor I cannot ensure compliance with laws and regulation, but I have to devise my audit strategy and my audit testing to take into consideration the company's processes around compliance with laws and regulation, and then comment on accordingly. So then there are various aspects I think which are required from the company's perspective as to what is the mechanism that company has put in place. So if you see nowadays, I see where there are complex companies which are into multi-locations, they will actually create a compliance tool within the organization which will monitor compliances not only in India but across the world, etc., etc. So all these aspects I think auditor needs to take into consideration while devising its strategy. And as far as I think documentation is concerned, as I mentioned, that the most important aspect is that have I understood the company or the industry in which it is operating, that's one. And how laws and regulations are affecting the industry. Now, we all know financial services industry heavily regulated. There are energy companies which have got restrictions and various other aspects. You look at the airport entities now, they have ERA which is a regulatory authority. So we need to take into consideration all those aspects and then devise our audit strategy to ensure that we have covered the risk of non-compliances of laws and regulations which ultimately have an effect on the financial system. And obviously significance, materiality all will come into play.
The challenge here is we are reasonably comfortable with the Indian laws and regulations. We will be substantially curious about international laws and regulations. Now today Indian companies are dealing with a lot of international markets. Therefore, your understanding of laws and regulations applicable to an audit will include reading even the customer contracts to see what sort of obligations you are undertaking. For example, if I am doing any work with a UK company, and in the UK contract they will say that I comply with the global GDPR requirements, that is data privacy requirements. I am responsible for the thing. And if I violate that, then the cost of penalties could be very high. So I have to factor that in my audit. I cannot say if GDPR does not apply in India, I will be happy. That can't be the case. This is an application which is applicable because of the way the entity is doing its business. Therefore, your inquiry about the management of the applicable laws and regulations cannot be applicable laws and regulations to the entity. The applicable laws and regulations are imposed on the entity because of contractual obligations should also be there. So therefore, your inquiry has to be broader.
And including, I think, environmental can have a significant impact also.
For ESG kind of cases, they would have an ESG audit, I assume. Big organizations regarding affluence.
No, it's not a question of ESG audit. Let me just interject. In ESG, the problem is this. Let us say, as per the entity's plan, it wants to achieve some ESG target in 3 years' time. Now I am doing an impairment assessment. I can't do an impairment assessment based on 5-year projections. Because in 3 years' time, you yourself or your plan said that something is going to change. I need to factor all the things which are there in the plan into the impairment assessment. Therefore, ESG has a financial effect, forget the audit. See, ESG is technically non-monetary, but the implications of that has to be factored.
So I understand that point. So my only question was that when it comes to environmental, I may not be an expert to kind of go and to do the review and have an opinion on that. So I would rather rely on an environmental audit and rely on that report to give, and where obviously it will absolve me because my opinion will be purely based on the environmental audit, and I will have no opinion and no liability as far as that is concerned. But the implication of that on the financial statements is what I am bound to imply.
Yeah, but there I think what I will then do is that's what I am saying.
Yes, it will apply. You will have to evaluate the capability, competency, independence, and then only rely on that report. Then you are fine.
No, but in this case, so compared to that other, where IT I still understand because that is more interlinked from this thing. This environmental, okay, this is a business environment, so you feel that I am still liable, from.
The question is whether you have factored the environmental impact in the financial statement is your responsibility.
See,
What is your responsibility?
whether it has got a significant impact, so if there is a violation of environmental laws and there is going to be a stiff penalty which is expected to arise, then in that situation I think it is critical for the auditor to evaluate its impact on the financials.
Is it related to sustainability and carbon credits?
All.
It components.
This has a higher responsibility on us because the no clause provision is directly impacting this. So it becomes very critical.
Sir, can we insist the client conducts a legal due diligence and submit a report before we sign off?
No, what is the reason?
Like in terms of compliance and the governance related.
Right. If the risk exists, if you believe that something is vulnerable there, you can ask him.
Also, there is a company.
First is how is the company doing? See, primary responsibility for financial is going to be the company. What is the company doing to get the comfort? That is what you will look at. You won't straight away jump and ask for this. You will first look at the company. If the company is not doing it adequately, then you will advise the company, it is good for you. Then only you will come to the answer. If you yourself don't know the answer, how are you saying everything is fine? Today the board directors of the company statement says, I will prepare the financial statement which is true and fair, which comply with the accounting standards, internal financial controls are fine, I will comply with all laws and regulations. They are giving all the declarations. How are they giving that?
So that what is that mechanism which the company has put in place that we need to look at? Because somebody, if they are certifying, it cannot be just a blind certificate.
There is a company secretary's certification on the complaints.
Secretary.
Can we take it as a base for our opinion, sir?
Again, it depends on the area, the independence, objectivity, competence of the person, and why are you not able to perform that work?
See,
We keep fighting for credit. Now, CS we say we can also do the work. Then why are you not doing the work? Why are you relying on the other way?
See, here I think, I would say that see, if there is a secretarial audit report, I mean, and then there are internal audit reports, for example, for
Not audit
internal.
reports, sir, the annual.
No, that's what the secretarial. Yeah.
Sir? That secretary report generally comes after the date of our report. So I won't even have it when I do the audit. In many cases, after this check.
But even though you were to look at that report, ultimate responsibility of what test that you have performed. So I cannot say secretarial audit report will be my
base for
test for saying that all laws are complied with. No, I mean, that cannot.
Moving on to the last standard, SA 540, auditing of accounting estimates. Now, this particular standard talks of assumptions, let's say, that the clients apply. How, as an auditor, we should challenge them? How are we going to document all of this? How we validate this and how we document this? So this is again a thing where I think in this particular standard, as auditors, definitely we need to be very proactive, and we need to exercise professional skepticism when it comes to, let's say, estimates or assumptions that the clients are applying. So how, as an auditor, what is it that we need to do, sir? What is our approach?
See, SA 540 is changing the approach. Again, objective is the same. Approach is changing. Approach now is predominantly emphasizing the control-based approach. And I personally completely subscribe to that. The reason is this. When we say we do substantive procedures, what do we mean? We mean that we are able to look at evidences, documents, information, and then verify the validity and accuracy. But when I am looking at an estimate is of a future. I don't have the document, I don't have the evidences. I will be finding it very difficult to do substantive procedures. And therefore the standard has moved the focus of SA 540 accounting estimates to a control-based approach. That means you need to critically evaluate how did the company make that estimate? What are the factors they considered? You need to critically evaluate the factors, especially the assumptions. Whether they are reasonable and whether they are appropriate, whether there are alternate assumptions possible available, how did they do that? So any area of accounting estimates, I will put even going concern as an accounting estimate. The reason is going concern also you are viewing the future. So how is the management making that estimate? That can be tested only through controls, therefore the focus is shifted to controls. This is the correct way to do it. And this is the single biggest change in SA 540. The problem with controls is, I'm sorry to say, but as auditors generally we don't understand controls very well. Okay? When you say control, we will say simple say check authorized the CFO as a control. We know how the CFO authorizes the check. He will be documenting and signing the check. He is not doing anything. That can't be a control. But that we call as a control. So we don't understand controls correctly. Therefore, our ability to put the responsibility on the management to say that how they are doing it, asking them the pertinent questions becomes very important. I digress slightly. One point we will be telling in ISA 315 is SA 315 revises. SA 315 requires the auditor to evaluate the risk control matrix maintained by the company. It's a specific requirement. Now, in 99% of our clients, the client will not have it. We have to tell the client, boss, if you don't give it, I have a problem. Because under 141, I am supposed to, 143, I am supposed to say whether I have sought and obtained all the information. Now I have sought the RCM. I didn't get it. I will have to qualify. I will have to qualify controls. So every client has to now build a proper RCM which you can bring into your file, because tomorrow NAFRA will say, how did you evaluate RCMs? You have written something, how do you know the client is doing it? The client should also be saying the same thing, no? So it becomes a very important thing, and SA 540 will develop the problem, because NAFRA is going after accounting estimates only, predominantly. And they will say about if the controls have not been documented and written, how did you test it? These are all imaginary controls. They will not replace any reliance on the testing. So we have to be very careful and guarded. How do we safeguard our interest? Because so far we have been covering the client. Let's now protect ourselves and do the right thing.
Sir, there is one SAE 3400 that is auditing the projections, etc. Can we take some leaves
That's
from?
not auditing the projections. That is only compilation of projections.
No, we have to do the
You are only
testing on the
compiling. You are not auditing.
We are not auditing.
Yeah.
We are only testing the scientific basis on which the
You
estimates are
are
being
building
made.
a developing a projection based on what the management gives. Management gives right, wrong, whatever it is, I'll develop it.
Yes,
That has got nothing
We are
to do.
not responsible for the numbers, but
That can't be used. Because there is no basis for that number, no?
so that can't be used.
And we can't audit projections in any case.
Yeah.
So India's 8 also talks about.
India's 8 is restatement.
Sir?
India's 8 is errors and prior period errors and
Accounting estimates. So can we take leaves from them?
Nothing. Not possible.
In this last one point, I think there are some common topics, or let's say concepts that are covering. I mean, that figure in almost all the standards. One is skepticism, which is obviously there in almost every standard that we read. There's a separate para. Scalability is something there, which is there like in all the standards. Use of experts, group audit. Now, considering these new set of standards, so what is it that we need to draw? I mean, skepticism has been spoken in every standard.
So Vinay, I think what happens is that now professional skepticism is not a new thing. In fact, it is there, or it should have been there, I would say, from the time, we started doing the audit. So if you see all the old standards, auditing standard also, they talk about the professional skepticism. Now what is professional skepticism is that, I mean, how do I, exercise my auditor's judgment when I am getting maybe two sets of views. One is a for, one is a contradictory view, etc. How do I come to a conclusion? If I am given or if I am presented by say management two sets of assumption, or there are say for example there is a kind of a bias, deliberate or unintentional also. Now in that case, if I don't use professional skepticism, the chances are that we will miss out on something which is very significant and which will have repercussions on the way the opinion has been given on the financial statements, and I carry a large responsibility for not exercising the professional skepticism. And it can arise out of many things like, maybe tight deadlines or lack of resources, lack of knowledge, lack of expertise within the organization, within the firm, etc. etc. To understand what are the nuances, I mean, if something is presented to me, can I challenge that? Okay. If I don't have the knowledge of that, then I may not be able to challenge the accuracy or the right or wrong of that. So this is what the professional skepticism is. But that, I think if you see that there has been a major change because of the way I think the complexities are arising, the regulators are I think looking at all these aspects very, very closely. So there is a reiteration of this professional skepticism across all the standards. You see any standard, especially these 7 that we talked about, professional skepticism is one of the predominant activities. And there is also a guidance as to how do you document professional skepticism. I mean, how do you document that, what kind of professional skepticism that you have. So I think this is a very fundamental assumption as far as doing audit is concerned, but there is a reiteration very much required because of the environment we are operating.
Professional skepticism, I will actually make a joke out of it. Let me give an example. When you go for an audit, on the first day, if the client is good, you usually is draft financial statements. Now what do? I pick up the financial statements, look at what the profit number is. If he says the profit is 750 crores, okay, 750 crores, my materiality is 7.5% of that, I'll put this is my materiality. Have I started even questioning first in my mind whether the profit should have been 750 crores or 700 crores or 800 crores? I have already accepted the client that 750 crores is the number. So where is the skepticism? Today, a stockbroker in the market, without our financial analyst in the market, without having any data, will come back and say this company I am expecting 700 crore profit. When that guy without any data is able to make such a prediction, why are you internally sitting there getting all the information not able to make the prediction and plan your audit properly? So our skepticism fails at the first step itself. I am talking realistically. Okay, that is what is practically happening. Second biggest thing is we have a significant bias towards positive attributes. That means if client says something is going to happen correctly, I will say yeah, it will happen correctly. I don't challenge the negativity at all. I will give an example here. India's 12, when it came out, it got in the concept of uncertain tax positions. We know in India how much of income tax or other tax disputes happen. Okay. Now what does uncertain tax position says? Uncertain tax positions means if a matter is challenged in the previous years and the same matter applies in the next year, you please disclose that also. Saying that this is a matter which is under dispute in the earlier years and so much is there in the subsequent years, therefore my total contingent liability is not just the matter which is under dispute, it's also including the matter which is after that. You tell me one report any report where uncertain exposure has been reflected. Maybe you will find it in Infosys or probably Wipro because they are reporting in the US. But on the Indian gap, tell me one company which is reflected. So where is the skepticism? So we talk about skepticism, but we know what is to be done, but we don't somehow don't follow it. I think we should change that attitude. We should come into it very clearly because the way everybody is looking at things is dramatically changing. And I see a big way because today my job is to promote audit quality and help Indian audit firms scale up and grow. I am saying that there is a huge outsourcing opportunity possibility in India which is not getting tapped because of all the negative reports that are coming. When a firm like a EY or a Deloitte or a KPMG or a PW is able to offshore so much work to India, and many other firms are doing that. Why are not every audit firm, today our clients, Indian clients don't pay the fees, no? But international people pay in dollars. We get good money. If we do our job correctly and demonstrate scale of our quality, we have a huge potential. Today in November we are going to have the Global event. It's focused on that. Now, Institute is trying to create the whole environment. If we as professionals respond to that, I think India can be the audit offshoring hub like how IT outsourcing is happening to India.
I think one important point of the PCOB for the last review season was you are right on MRC, Management Rid of Controls. They were very clear. How did you evidence first? What are the questions you asked? How did you know that they were actually putting those controls in place? How they were testing? And what is a monitoring mechanism? And most of the times they found that PCOB reports, they failed actually.
Yeah.
And then as you rightly said, we are so skewed towards a positivity. If a management says a control is there, we are not going to the next step and asking, where is the control? How did you demonstrate it is happening? And what is evidence? So as you rightly said, maybe one signature, that is not effective from a PCOB perspective. So I think we have a huge job on the skepticism side.
I mean, basically, how do you distinguish between this whole management bias?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you challenge that?
Challenge that. We have a, whether you like it or not.
We are biased to the management.
We have a bias towards man. We have a bias.
Would skepticism be considered as a qualification in case I give a skepticism on the opinion?
The skeptic means you have got a mindset of inquiry.
Yeah, no, I get that point. The point is that the moment I do that, I mean, this is a new concept. We have not been doing this for so many years now, and suddenly if we start doing that, clients should have the mindset to accept, auditor can be skeptic, based on his limitations, right? So
we'll speak separately. I got a lot of feeling about India. I'm trying to articulate it to multiple firms. Some firms are listening, so we can speak separately.
You make an accounting standard on that.
Time is up and we have tried to touch upon all the standards. I'm sure that we can't do justice in 2 hours, but I think we have done our best. We have addressed each of these standards, and I'd like to thank both Sunil sir and Balaji for answering all these questions and giving us a lot of insights. And going through all these standards in a matter of 3-4 days and being able to answer, I think is a big thing. Any questions from the audience? Would be happy to take.
So the website, when I searched on SQM, it was not available. Only SQCPE.
Exposure draft. It's for exposure draft of SQM1.
The institute website it is there.
So it is not yet final. It is for comments, and then after the comments are received, exposure.
But it is there at the website.
Sir, you mentioned this uncertain taxes you were mentioning. Suppose you are getting an engagement to certify financials before the company comes out for a public issue. And suppose we add up to the contingent liability.
But you have to do the right thing, no? You have to do the right thing, no?
That will affect
You should do the right.
But the management will say it is under. We have not got any demand notice. Why are
Audit report is yours. Financial statement is management's.
Yes.
Let them do what they want. We will do what we want.
Take the fees and then.
Because the issue is this: when we compromise, invariably the sufferer is the auditor. You take coffee day. The entire board has been there for the respective companies. No action, nothing will happen to them. They will all be happy. The chairman is no more. He is gone. Auditor is the one who is facing all the flag. I'm not saying auditor should not face the flag in the incident, but what I'm trying to say is any problem, client will work happily. You will be sitting in trouble. And we are not equipped to handle these troubles.
Yes, yes, yes.
We are simple Sridhara people, trying to do the best.
Can you give some advice on the, medium-sized firms? What type of expert opinions they can, expert reliance? What are the areas they can? One is IT. Other than that, what can you?
TQCR, you can outsource.
Based on your experience.
Valuation, forensic audit, forensic team. See, fraud is a very important matter in the audits. Today's Nafra is also saying the same thing. They are saying that you are not responsible for detection, but you please demonstrate that you did everything possible. In spite of that, you didn't detect. I agree. But you can't say, boss, I didn't detect because you didn't do anything. That is not acceptable. So therefore, forensic audit, you can involve people, forensic specialists, to get advice as to how to go about things, how to look at things. They will come up with very simple things which you don't observe. For example, they will say if a vendor is, there is a lot of purchases from the vendor, they will simply say compare the logo of the vendor in each of the invoices. Logo should be same. Logo cannot change. One same vendor, you can't have logo on left side, one invoice, right side, one invoice. That means something may be wrong. Simple things like that. But we, as auditors, we are naive. We don't know all these things. But if they give us the input, we can at least follow that. But you get the inputs from the right people.
I think if you, from the IT perspective, I think analytics nowadays is playing an important role, especially when the volume of transactions are significant. Even actually there will be tools which are available which will...
Analytics, the only caution I will make is, analytics is garbage in garbage. If you put the wrong input, you get all the wrong output, nothing will happen. So unless you are confident.
You cannot not rely on it blindly. But if you use it effectively, it's great tool.
Yeah.
So this expert opinions, they are sorted, some expert opinion 35, 36 like that. Are they sorted subject matter wise, sir? Is it
No,
available?
ESC is not sorted subject matter. Only ITFG is sorted subject matter. ESC is not sorted.
That would be.
But you have to go to the index and then you will see. In the back index, the end of the ESC, they have printed the index of all the ESCs given. That means they are given by the index by topic.
Topic, yes.
For example, depreciation. If I look at D, depreciation, it will tell me all the ESCs which are there for depreciation. So they have done the index at the back of the ESC.
Expert advisory.
Expert advisory committee opinions. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very well upon topic. I put some sentences like tone at the top need to be right. Quality is not a destination but a journey. Quality is not one-time activity but a continuous one. Correct your mistakes and try correcting it immediately before the regulator finds it out and points at you. Familiarity threat. Can secretarial audit report come to auditor's rescue? Need to be very proactive and the professional skepticism to be at its best, and many more things were very well upon. And our moderator for excellence, CA Vinay KS, and our beloved panelists handled the interactive session. Big round of applause to. On behalf of members present here and all the managing committee members of Bangalore branch of ICI, we would like to hand over a memento to the speakers and the panelists. Now, can I request CA VM Tuppat, SICASA chairman, to hand over memento to CA Vinay KS. Thank you, sir. Can I request CA Pramod R. Hegde, our Vice Chairman, to hand over memento to CA V. Balaji, sir. Thank you. And can I request CA Kavita Parmesh, our treasurer, to hand over memento to CA Sunil Bhumralkar sir. Thank you one and all. We have a dinner arranged for all of you at the cafeteria 4th floor. That you will join us for this dinner. And before that, we have 55th Regional Conference of SISF ICI to be held at Hospet on 12th and 13th of October. Request all of you to register kindly. Thank you.
And prior period errors and
According estimates. So can we take leaves from them?
nothing. Not possible.
In this last one point, I think there are some common topics or let's say concepts that are covering, I mean that figure in almost all the standards. One is skepticism, which is obviously there in almost every standard that we read. There's a separate para. Scalability is something there, which is there in again all the standards. Use of experts, group audit. So, considering these new set of standards, so what is it that we need to draw? I mean, skepticism has been spoken in every standard.
So Vinay, I think what happens is that now professional skepticism is not a new thing. In fact, it is there, or it should have been there, I would say, from the time we started doing the audit. So if you see all the old standards, auditing standard also, they talk about the professional skepticism. Now what is professional skepticism is that, I mean, how do I, exercise my auditor's judgment when I am getting maybe two sets of views. One is a for, one is a contradictory view, etc. How do I come to a conclusion? If I am given or if I am presented by say management two sets of assumption, or there are say for example there is a kind of a bias, deliberate or unintentional also. Now in that case, if I don't use professional skepticism, the chances are that we will miss out on something which is very significant and which will have repercussions on the way the opinion has been given on the financial statements, and I carry a large responsibility for not exercising the professional skepticism. And it can arise out of many things like, maybe tight deadlines or lack of resources, lack of knowledge, lack of expertise within the organization, within the firm, etc. etc. To understand what are the nuances, I mean, if something is presented to me, can I challenge that? Okay. If I don't have the knowledge of that, then I may not be able to challenge the accuracy or the right or wrong of that. So this is what the professional skepticism is. But that, I think if you see that there has been a major change because of the way I think the complexities are arising, the regulators are I think looking at all these aspects very, very closely. So there is a reiteration of this professional skepticism across all the standards. You see any standard, especially these 7 that we talked about, professional skepticism is one of the predominant activities. And there is also a guidance as to how do you document professional skepticism. I mean, how do you document that, what kind of professional skepticism that you have. So I think this is a very fundamental assumption as far as doing audit is concerned, but there is a reiteration very much required because of the environment we are on.
Professional skepticism, I will actually make a joke out of it. Let me give you an example. When you go for an audit, on the first day, if the client is good, you usually is draft financial statements. Now what do? I pick up the financial statements, look at what the profit number is. If he says the profit is 750 crores, okay, 750 crores, my materiality is 7.5% of that, I'll put this is my materiality. Have I started even questioning first in my mind whether the profit should have been 750 crores or 700 crores or 800 crores? I already accepted the client that 750 crores is the number. So where is the skepticism? Today, a stockbroker in the market, without our financial analyst in the market, without having any data, will come back and say, this company I am expecting 700 crore profit. When that guy without any data is able to make such a prediction, Why are you internally sitting there getting all the information, not able to make the prediction and plan your audit properly? So our skepticism fails at the first step itself. I am talking realistically. Okay, that is what is practically happening. Second biggest thing is we have a significant bias towards positive attributes. That means if client says something is going to happen correctly, I will say yeah, it will happen correctly. I don't challenge the negativity at all. I will give an example here. India's 12, when it came out, it got in the concept of uncertain tax positions. We know in India how much of income tax or other tax disputes happen. Okay. Now what does uncertain tax position says? Uncertain tax positions means if a matter is challenged in the previous years and the same matter applies in the next year, you please disclose that also. Saying that this is a matter which is under dispute in the earlier years and so much is there in the subsequent years. Therefore, my total contingent liability is not just the matter which is under dispute, it's also including the matter which is after that. You tell me one report, any report, where uncertain tax position has been reflected. Maybe you will find it in Infosys or probably Wipro because they are reporting in the US. But on the Indian GAAP, tell me one company which is reflected. So where is the skepticism? So we talk about skepticism, but we know what has to be done, but we don't follow it. I think we should change that attitude, we should come into it very clearly, because the way everybody is looking at things is dramatically changing. And I see a big way, because today my job is to promote audit quality and help Indian audit firms scale up and grow. I am saying that there is a huge outsourcing opportunity possibility in India, which is not getting tapped because of all negative reports that are coming. When a firm like a EY or a Deloitte or a KPMG or a PW is able to offshore so much work to India, and many other firms are doing that, why are not every audit firm, today our clients, Indian clients don't pay the fees, no? But international people pay in dollars, we'll get good money. If we do our job correctly and demonstrate scale of our quality, we have a huge potential. Today in November we are going to have the Global event. It's focused on that. Now, Institute is trying to create the whole environment. If we as professionals respond to that, I think India can be the audit offshoring hub like how IT outsourcing is done to India.
I think one important point of the PCOB for the last review season was you are right on MRC, Management Review of Controls. They were very clear. How did you evidence first? What are the questions you asked? How did you know that they were actually putting those controls in place? How they were testing? And what is a monitoring mechanism? And most of the times they found that PCOB reports, they failed actually.
Yeah.
And then as you rightly said, we are so skewed towards a positivity. If a management says a control is there, you are not going to the next step and asking, where is the control? How did you demonstrate it is happening? And what is evidence? So as you rightly said, maybe one signature, that is not effective from a PCOB perspective. So I think we have a huge job on the skepticism side.
I mean, basically, how do you distinguish between this whole management bias?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you challenge that?
Challenge that. We have a, whether you like it or not.
We are biased towards management.
We have a bias towards management. We have a bias.
Would skepticism be considered as a qualification in case I give a skepticism on the opinion?
Skeptic means you have got a mindset of inquiry.
No, I get that point. The point is that the moment I do that, this is a new concept. We have not been doing this for so many years now, and suddenly if we start doing that, clients should have a mindset to accept, auditor can be skeptic, based on his limitations, right? So
we'll speak separately. I want a lot of period of client. I'm trying to articulate it to multiple firms. Some firms are listening, so we can speak separately.
You make an accounting standard on that.
Time is up and we have tried to touch upon all the standards. I'm sure that we can't do justice in 2 hours, but I think we have done our best. We have addressed each of these standards, and I'd like to thank both Sunil sir and Balaji for answering all these questions and giving us a lot of insights. And going through all these standards in a matter of 3-4 days and being able to answer, I think is a big thing. Any questions from the audience? Would be happy to take.
So the website, when I searched on SQM, it was not available. Only SQC came.
It's exposure draft. It's for exposure draft of SQM1.
The Institute website it is there.
So it is not yet final. It is for comments, and then after the comments are received, exposure.
But it is there in the website.
Sir, you mentioned this uncertain taxes you were mentioning. Suppose you are getting an engagement to certify financials before the company comes out for a public issue. And suppose we add up to the contingent liability.
But you have to do the right thing, no? You have to do the right thing, no?
That will affect
You should do the right.
But the management will say it is under. We have not got any demand notice. Why are
Audit
you
report
not
is yours. Financial statement is management's.
Yes.
Let them do what they want, we will do what we want.
Take the fees and then.
Because the issue is this, when we compromise, invariably the sufferer is the auditor. You take coffee day. The entire board has been there for the respective companies. No action, nothing will happen to them. They will all be happy. The chairman is no more. He is gone. Auditor is the one who is facing all the flag. I'm not saying auditor should not face the flag in the incident. But what I'm trying to say is, any problem, client will work happily. You will be sitting in trouble. And we are not equipped to handle these troubles.
Yes.
We are simple Sridhar people. Trying to do the best.
Can you give some advice on the, medium-sized firms? What type of expert opinions they can, expert reliance? What are the areas they can? One is IT. Other than that, what can you?
EQCR,
EQCR is
you can outsource.
Based on your experience.
Valuation, forensic audit, forensic PE. See, fraud is a very important matter in the audits. Nafra is also saying same thing. They are saying that you comply with, you are not responsible for detection, but you please demonstrate that you did everything possible in spite of that you didn't detect. I agree. But you can't say, boss, I didn't detect because you didn't do anything. That is not acceptable. So therefore, forensic audit, you can involve people, forensic specialists to get advice as to how to go about things, how to look at things. They will come up with a very simple thing which you don't observe. For example, they will say if a vendor, there is a lot of purchases from the vendor, they will simply say compare the logo of the vendor in each of the invoices. Logo should be same. Logo cannot change. No? The same vendor, you can't have logo on the left side, one invoice, right side, one invoice. That means something may be wrong. Simple things like that. But we, as auditors, we are naive. We don't know all these things. But if they give us the input, we can at least follow that. But you get the inputs from the right people.
I think if you, from the IT perspective, I think analytics nowadays is playing an important role, especially when the volume of transactions are significant. Even actually there will be tools which are available.
Analytics, the only caution I will make is, analytics is garbage in garbage. If you put the wrong input, you get all the wrong output, nothing will happen. So unless you are confident.
You cannot not rely on it blindly. But if you use it effectively, it's great.
Yeah.
Sir, this expert opinions, they are sorted, some expert opinion 35, 36 like that. Are they sorted subject matter wise, sir? Is it
No, ESC is not sorted subject matter. Only ITFG is sorted subject matter. ESC is not sorted.
That would be.
But you have to go to the index and then you can see. In the back index, the end of the ESC, they have printed the index of all the ESCs given. That means they have given by the index by topic.
Topic,
For
yes.
example, depreciation. If I look at D, depreciation, it will tell me all the ESCs which are there for depreciation. So they have done the index at the back of the ESC.
Expert advisory.
Expert advisory committee opinions. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very well upon topic. I put some sentences like tone at the top need to be light. Quality is not a destination but a journey. Quality is not one-time activity but a continuous one. Correct your mistakes and try correcting it immediately before the regulator finds it out and points at you. Familiarity threat. Can secretarial audit report come to auditor's rescue? Need to be very proactive and the professional skepticism to be at its best, and many more things were very well upon. And our moderator for excellence, CA Vinay KS, and our beloved panelists handled the interactive session. Big round of applause to On behalf of members present here and all the managing committee members of Bangalore branch of ICI, we would like to hand over a memento to the speakers and the panelists. Now, can I request CA VM Tuppat, SICASA chairman, to hand over memento to CA Vinay KS. Thank you, sir. Can I request CA Pramod R. Hegde, our Vice Chairman, to hand over memento to CA V. Balaji, sir. Thank you. And can I request CA Kavita Parmesh, our Treasurer, to hand over memento to CA Sunil Bhumralkar, sir. Thank you one and all. We have a dinner arranged for all of you at the cafeteria 4th floor. Dinner. And before that, we have 55th Regional Conference of SISF ICI to be held at Hospet on 12th and 13th of October. Request all of you to register kindly. Thank you.